This is every cheat hack you should use if you're homeless. When you're living like a nomad, that usually means you're not torching up the area very much, which also means you have to deal with a lot of creepers. That is, unless you take the time to tame a cat, since by just grabbing yourself a feline friend, that'll be enough to keep all these creepers away from you. And phantoms too, which when you're not regularly sleeping in a bed, that's also very appreciated. And while sure it might take some fish to tame them initially, they're an investment that pays off, and a cheap one at that too. And luckily for us, we don't have to just settle for one pet, since by killing some of the skeletons that are giving you problems and using their bones to tame wolves, we can grab just 2 of these and then breed them up until we have our own personal army. And since we're not getting any trouble from creepers now that we have our cat, these wolves will be able to deal with the other mobs that are giving us troubles. You just might also want to dye their collars so that you can keep track of them. Minecraft's only got the one breed of wolf, it can get pretty easy to mix them up. Stop worrying about getting a netherite sword, since the truth is that if you were to get yourself just 3 cobblestone and 2 sticks, you can actually deal more damage. In fact, if you give them both of them sharpness 5, the stone axe will do 12 hit points per hit, whereas the netherite sword only deals 11. And while I'm not saying that an enchanting table's cheap, I will say it's a lot cheaper than a netherite sword, especially one that's also enchanted. So as long as you keep your distance from mobs and attack when your cooldown's gone down, I think you'll find this will be plenty well for you, especially in the game. When you've got a bed but you don't have a house, it can be tough to place it down without having monsters nearby. That is, if you're on land. Since strange as it may seem, if you take your bed and place it at the bottom of a body of water, then as long as there's no drowns nearby, you'll actually be able to sleep down there just the same. And none of the hostile mobs that were chasing you on land will be able to follow you down there. So then when you wake up and swim to the surface, you'll arrive with a whole bunch of zombies and skeletons burning in the air. Which is all the reason that you should turn your bed into a riverbed, or at least place it on one. Sand is a useful resource, but digging up that sand is a tedious chore. So to solve that, don't waste your time or your shovel mining sand. Since the truth of the matter is that if you just place down a single block of TNT, you can easily collect a stack or more of sand with each explosion. And especially if you happen across a shipwreck chest or one of the structures like a desert temple, you'll have plenty of TNT anyways. So this will be a worthwhile trade-off. Instead of wasting your time to set up a furnace and getting the fuel to smelt your food, if you just carry around a sword and a flint and steel, you can get it done just the same. And with just that extra step of setting them on fire, we can one-hit kill it and get ourselves perfectly cooked pork chops and steak. There's a reason that speedrunners do this. And not to mention that once you get fire aspect on your sword, doing this is even easier. And you won't have to wait the 20 seconds per cooking each pork chop when you have it ready. Finding your way back out of a cave can be tough. And while leaving a path of torches is definitely possible, that's also burning through quite a bit of the coal that you're going down there to mine in the first place. So instead, silly as it may seem, we should actually bring down a snow golem. Now, hear me out. If you tie one of these to a lead, then we can drag it along and essentially create snow layers as a path to lead us right back out of the cave, which would be incredibly useful if you're mining so long that your pickaxe breaks down in the caves. Because while you can always dig up to get out of a cave, that's a lot tougher to do when you have nothing to dig with. And plus, the snow golem will also be able to throw off some snowballs and maybe keep some other mobs away from you down in the caves, giving you both a getaway and a ride or die. Here's how to make an infinite water source with just 1 water source block. All you're gonna need is 1 bucket of water and 2 pieces of kelp. And when we dig out our regular 2x2 hole, what we would do instead is place our water block 1 block elevated on one of the corners. And then with the 2 pieces of kelp in the alternating corners like this, you'll find that they turn the flowing water into actual source blocks. And there you go. Even if you're in the driest of deserts, you're gonna have infinite water for as long as you need it. Potions are an underrated part of Minecraft survival, and while it can definitely be a chore to have to brew these up, here's a way to cut back on that. Since by just placing a hopper over top of one of your brewing stands, we can essentially queue up a playlist of all the things that we're going to be adding into our potion. So right after the nether wart finishes, it'll put in your ingredient and then put in the modifier after that, making this cheap and efficient, both adjectives that I like. Here's why you should fight your wither inside of the end. Now, not during the dragon fight, that would just overcomplicate things, but rather when you've killed the dragon, then it's worth noting that if you spawn in the wither sideways in this T shape, it'll be trapped inside of the bedrock portal. And now you can use all of your cheapest tools to kill it off, even on harder difficulties. XP is a valuable resource to have, so you likely want to get a lot of it. But getting a lot of XP doesn't mean that you need to build yourself an XP farm, since the simple truth is that if you head over to the nether, there's plenty of XP lying around in the floor. By just mining nether quartz ore, I think you'll find this is one of the most effective ways of gaining XP at a very high rate. And it's a lot safer than having to kill a bunch of mobs. Plus, nether quartz ore generates frequently and in pretty big veins, both of which means that you're gonna get a lot of this stuff too. So while quartz as a crafting ingredient might not be so useful if you're not building a house or redstone, even if you don't keep any of the item itself, I think this is still worth doing in your next playthrough. If you need a lot of blocks fast, dirt is a good go-to. It's easy to dig, and it doesn't burn up like leaves and other things. But you don't have to worry about getting an overpowered diamond shovel to be able to insta-mine this. Since the real truth is that if you just have a stone shovel enchanted with efficiency 4, that'll be fast enough to instantly mine grass, dirt, and sand. And while sure the durability is nothing to write home about, you have to remember that we're homeless, so we don't have much of a home to write back to anyway. And that could still get you plenty of dirt that you would actually need, especially for when you need to bridge in other dimensions. Or you could use that same stone shovel with that snow golem to get a lot of blocks that way. And even if your stone shovel's unenchanted, you'll still be able to instantly mine all of the snow layers at its feet to get constant snowballs for making snow blocks. But keep some of those as just snowballs too, since instead of using fire resistance potions or a bow to kill a blaze, this is actually a rare case where our snowballs can do quite a lot of damage. And if you carry enough stacks of 16 of these in your inventory, you can clear out a nether forges pretty quick, and get all the blaze rods that you would need to beat the game. And if you don't want to worry about carrying around blocks at all, then it's worth mentioning that with just 2 buckets, that's all the blocks for pillaring that we ever need. Since with 2 buckets of powdered snow and a pair of leather boots on your feet, we can place them both on top of the other, and then take the bottom one and then move it to the top. Repeat as much as you want, you can instantly scale up hundreds of blocks without having to have hundreds of blocks on hand. Instead of crafting a new bow every time they need a dispenser, it's worth mentioning that in recent updates, you're actually able to craft them with bows that have as little as 1 durability point left. And that way you can save resources and recycle those old bows that you're getting from skeletons. Put the string to better use, like a fishing rod. Since just one of these, we can easily kill ghasts. As iCraftMC shows off, we're able to grab the big hitbox of the ghast and pull it right back down to our level. At which point, it does not take very many hits with a sword or axe to kill this thing off. And if you want to make things even easier and quicker, just put the fishing rod inside your offhand, and you can dual wield your way to victory. And hold on to that fishing rod when you go back to the overworld, since if it's raining, you've got the perfect opportunity to get yourself a bunch of loot and food. Since fact of the matter is, if you fish outside, that's already a benefit for fishing. And then when it's raining, that goes even higher. So even if you don't have fancy enchantments like Luck of the Sea or Lure on top of your fish rod, I think you'll find this does the job well enough to increase your rates. If you're trying to get a lot of leaves, then normally we would pick shears for that. But with that same 2 iron and a couple of sticks, I think you'll find that a hoe actually does the job much better. Now granted, you need to add Soak Touch to it, but even just having a hoe that's iron or above is enough to instantly mine through any leaves. Plus, you'll also find the hoe to be a useful tool for when you go down into an ancient city, or for even just grabbing hay bales on top of a village. Really, unless you're trying to get wool from a sheep, there's no reason to use shears instead of a hoe. Even has better durability too. Normally a night vision potion might seem excessive, but while you might not want to use one of these inside of a cave, you should try drinking one of these the next time you go to an ocean. Since with regular brightness settings, by drinking one of these, you can see straight through the ocean. And that gives you an easy, cheap way to find things like geodes, ocean monuments, and the real kicker, shipwrecks, which themselves can lead you to a lot of food, as well as a lot of buried treasure. And after finding enough of that, you won't have to worry about finding cheap hacks. You'll be pretty well to do. Since with just a few of these shipwreck maps, we can get ourselves the diamond tools without ever having to touch a cave. And then if you mix the diamonds that you're finding from these loot chests, as well as the obsidian that you might get from something like a ruined portal chest, you can have yourself a fully functioning enchanting table, and that way you can have fortune enchantments for when you actually want to go down strip mining. After all, if you're gonna do something, might as well do it right. Let's face it, rails aren't cheap. So instead of spending all of your iron ingots on just getting a couple of these, I think you'll have a much better time if you just take the time to mine some of these when you're down in a mine shaft. That way we could save our iron ingots for where they actually matter. Now, we've talked in the past about using moss as a way to clear through deep slate, and that's still true. With bone meal and a stone hoe, you can eviscerate the depths. But I want to add on another reason for why you should try this. Since while the moss is able to convert deep slate, it can't convert the ores. And just at that little sticking point, we're able to find the ores that might have generated down there much easier, which is great for diamonds, considering that those have a higher chance of generating underneath other blocks anyway. So when you can instantly mine away the blanket that the diamonds were sleeping under, that'll be a lot better for your time and for your pickaxe. And not to mention that just moss by itself is a really useful block. And as soon as we get our hands on this from something like a shipwreck chest, that gives us an easy path to have 10 new unique items that just come from one single block. Things like azalea and its variants, as well as oak wood, leaves, hanging roots, rooted dirt, all of that, just from one block. Not to mention that you can grind a lot of that down in a composter to also get more bone meal. Repeat the cycle, it gets pretty crazy. And if you don't have arrows, don't worry about crafting them, since while the materials look cheap, they're actually pretty tough to get. So instead, save that flint and turn it into a fletching table to get yourself all of the arrows you need through a villager. By just trading with a fletcher, you can get a stack of arrows for only 5 emeralds. And now you don't have to worry about killing off the entire chicken population just to get yourself a couple of these arrows. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?